January 8th, 2021. What's up, guys? So I have a question for you. How many of you have experienced kind of severe food poisoning? Just that you go out to eat, a few hours later you get that severe, sharp stomach ache, you start getting sweaty and salivating and mucus production, and you know you're going to just explode, one or both, throwing up or diarrhea, and you're just so sick and it just happens really fast. Well, funny enough, since the past few years, since I've commit to eating organic and eating at home and not eating out, unless it's a rare exception, I don't get food poisoning anymore. So I came across a great article that we're going to look at today. But what's funny is when we get food poisoning, that's what we say, oh, I got food poisoning. I must have got some kind of stomach bug. A 24-hour flu, or just a quick stomach bug that got me. I'm going to tell you, that's probably not the case. What you got was acutely poisoned by pesticides that happen to be at a concentrated level in whatever meal you got. And we're going to take a look and see exactly how this is happening and why it happens so often here in America. So let's jump over to the internet. Now, this really is going to highlight the fact that the EPA just does not give a crap about our health or the environment. They have nothing to do with protecting anything other than their bottom line and the money and the corporate interests that they deal with. That's it. Okay? They don't care about you or I or our kids and the amount of poison that we ingest as a consequence to their horrible decisions. So let me move over here. Now, this was an article that I shared on Instagram last month about how the EPA is proposing to reapprove chlorpyrifos, which is a known neurotoxin. We know it's causing brain damage in children, lowering IQ, causing all kinds of neurological problems. And yet they're talking about reapproving it, which it really wasn't banned completely anyway. They were just kind of phasing it out, and they're like, let's just bring it back. Keep in mind, in some of the videos we've already talked about, there's over 85,000 different pesticides that are approved for use out there, and they're evaluated. All the chemicals that are out there are evaluated by classes, and they say they do, but they do not take into a cumulative load, the toxic load of all the accumulated toxins that are in the environment together, right? The pesticides that are sprayed on the food, and then over 10,000 chemicals that are used in the manufacturing of the food. So before we jump into this article, I just want to plug the website because they deserve your attention. This is called Environmental Health News, ehn.org. And they constantly are putting out really fantastic content specific to our environmental exposures and how it's affecting our health, and calling out the broken system of our regulatory agencies. And we need more eyes on this. Not only just to help you be vigilant in protecting you and your family, but so the more of us that speak out against this, the more pressure they'll have to actually do something about it. So this is going to be a bit of a long video because they always are with me. I have to understand the details, and if I can teach you guys the details, the level of poisoning that's happening to you and your kids, it's hard to make change. It's hard to change our behaviors. If you're used to eating out, you're going to want to continue eating out. If you're used to buying conventional garbage, you're going to want to buy conventional garbage because that's what tastes good to you at this time. But if you truly understand the details of how it's harming you, you're more likely to have the motivation to make the change. And that's why I stick to the details, and hopefully people will go along with me to learn it. I'm already 4 minutes in, and I've probably already lost 80% of the audience. So this one just came out a couple days ago, January 5th, 2021. It's a great op-ed. It's called The Reckless Embrace of Banned Pesticides in the U.S. And I don't know why we allow this in our country, but you're going to learn some of the reasons why they think it's okay to do. A broken EPA pesticide office stands at a crossroads. Here we go. There's a reason that the pesticide Aldicarb, how many of you have heard of Aldicarb? Probably very few. There's a reason the pesticide Aldicarb is banned in more than 100 countries and one of only 36 pesticides out of thousands that are designated as extremely hazardous. Okay? Out of tens of thousands of pesticides, only 36 are designated as extremely hazardous. Aldicarb is one of them by the World Health Organization. It really is nasty stuff. It's a potent neurotoxin that pollutes groundwater, especially in areas with highly permeable soils. People, particularly children, who drink water or eat this food contaminated by Aldicarb are at a significant risk of developmental harm. More than a decade ago, the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency estimated that the amount of Aldicarb that young children and infants could be exposed to in the U.S. was already 8 times greater than the amount known to cause harm. Already 8 times greater than the amount known to cause harm. That means the use of Aldicarb had likely been poisoning young children for years and years and years. After several years of negotiations, the EPA signed a voluntary agreement in 2010, 11 years ago, or probably 10, some point in there, with Bayer Crop Science, of course. Bayer Crop Science, one of the biggest anti-life corporations in the world, then the sole maker of Aldicarb, to phase out production of the use of that pesticide by 2018, which hasn't happened. The 8-year time frame of the phase-out left much to be desired, but the uses that posed the greatest risk to young children on citrus and potatoes were eliminated immediately, but it's still being sprayed out there, guys. That made Aldicarb one of only a handful of pesticides that had been actively targeted for phase-out by the EPA in the last 20 years. But unfortunately, the troubling story of Aldicarb use in the U.S. does not end there. In April of 2011, just several months after Bayer Crop Science agreed to completely phase out the production of the pesticide, another pesticide company called AgLogic, LLC, secured approval from the EPA for the use of Aldicarb on a subset of crops like cotton, sugar beets, and sweet potatoes. Guys, sugar for a long time has been replaced, the sugar cane, with sugar beets. If it doesn't say cane sugar, you're getting sugar beet sugar. And it's not only being sprayed with Aldicarb, but also with glyphosate because it's GMO sugar beets that are Roundup resistant, as well as probably a few other pesticide trait resistance. So it's toxic stuff. And sweet potatoes in the U.S., and the EPA is now considering expanding that approval even further. They want to bring it back. So earlier this month, AgLogic applied for approval of Aldicarb on oranges, grapefruit, lemons, limes in Florida and Texas, altogether accounting for about 400,000 acres of crops. So 10 years ago, they automatically say, we're going to phase it out, but we have to at least stop spraying it on citrus and potatoes. And now they're saying, well, we want to spray it on all the citrus again. This is ridiculous. The EPA has not yet indicated whether it will approve this application. I'm willing to bet they will. But it's hard to overstate just how outrageous it is that the agency has not only turned its back on its commitment to phasing out a pesticide with such well-documented health risks, but is actually considering expanding its use on the very crops that pose the highest risk to people. Before we go into some more about the the EPA and their history of just poisoning us willingly, let's take a quick pause and really look at Aldicarb and what it does. Okay? Aldicarb has a very robust toxicity database. Awesome. Including acute, chronic, developmental, reproductive, and neurotoxicity studies. Aldicarb has high acute toxicity, causing, and this is important, cholinergic symptoms due to the inhibition of acetylcholinesterase. These symptoms are dose dependent, and they're going to tell you it's rapidly reversible. One, it's metabolized quickly if you're not getting chronic exposure, but most people are every day in their food. This is when you're having that food poisoning I was talking about. This is an acute exposure to high levels of probably Aldicarb or a similar organophosphate that is affecting this acetylcholinesterase, which is an enzyme that can break down acetylcholine. All right. Aldicarb, let's go over here. Mechanisms of toxicity. So Aldicarb and its sulfoxide metabolite binds and inhibits the acetylcholinesterase, which is the enzyme responsible for metabolizing the neurotransmitter acetylcholine, right, at the cholinergic nerve terminals. So what's happening is it's blocking that enzyme, the enzyme's ability to break down acetylcholine, and so acetylcholine just continues to build, the levels continue to build and aggregate around the cholinergic nerve terminal, which if you followed some of the research that I've done in the past, or if you follow Dr. Russell Blaylock, or if you just follow science around excitotoxins and excitotoxicity, specifically around glutamate, this is very similar. Glutamate, when we use MSG or yeast extract or isolated proteins and isolated soy proteins and all this garbage in the food, builds up around the nerve terminals, causing excitotoxicity. This is a very similar mechanism around the cholinergic nerve terminals with acetylcholine. The resultant accumulation of synaptic acetylcholine causes overstimulation of the cholinergic pathways and produces central and peripheral toxicities. This action leads to signs of cholinergic crisis, including, if you've had food poisoning, this is it, right? Including sweating, nausea, dizziness, meiosis, blurred vision, abdominal pain, vomiting, diarrhea, progressing to tremors, convulsions, and even death. Awesome. Let's keep it in the food supply and let's spray it all over, but only in America. The acetylcholinesterase inhibition is readily reversible with rapid reaction occurring through spontaneous decarbamylation, and recovery of function is evident within minutes to hours. So you process this quick, you go through hell for a little while, and typically you're okay if you didn't die, right? But there is chronic accumulation and effects causing neurological damage. This is just the acute issues they're talking about, that poisoning. Right? But over time, this is causing neurological degradation. And I guarantee you this is one of many causes that leads us to Alzheimer's too. Talks about acute seizures and episodes with exposure to Aldicarb, which is in the class of carbamates, right? Like Aldicarb, carbofuran, carbaryl, many other chemicals in that class of organophosphate. Okay, and it goes on and on. You guys can go in and read a lot of this, but human toxic neuropathy caused by industrial agents. So it goes on and talks about Aldicarb and exposure. The severity of symptoms is dose-related with early onset nausea, vomiting, lacrimation, blurred vision, salivation, headache. High dose poisoning may be fatal. Lower dose intoxication begins with early appearing muscarinic and nicotinic signs, reaching peak severity within 2 to 3 hours of exposure. Neurotoxicity caused by chronic carbamate exposure is rare, but one such case displayed early symptoms of carbamate toxicity, neurological symptoms, weakness, neuropathy, limb sensitivity, and so on and so forth. So it's horrible for us, guys. It's a neurotoxin and one that's heavily used in our country. I was just looking at acetylcholine and how it acts on the cholinergic pathways as an agonist, and the consequences of too many high levels of acetylcholine. Again, it's a vital neurotransmitter, just like glutamate, but if we're getting too much, serious consequences. It's always about balance, and nature knows how to maintain balance. It's when we interfere and modify things that causes problems, or spray poison on everything. All right, so it talks a lot about how it's the cholinergic pathways, right? So what happens with cholinergic toxicity? This is important to understand. Cholinergic toxicity is caused by medications, drugs, and substances that stimulate, enhance, or mimic the neurotransmitter acetylcholine. Acetylcholine is the primary neurotransmitter of the parasympathetic nervous system. Acetylcholine stimulates muscarinic and nicotinic receptors to cause muscle contractions and granular secretions. Cholinergic toxicity occurs when too much acetylcholine is present in the receptor synapse, leading to excessive parasympathetic effects. All right. Let's go to, well, this is interesting. Cholinergic toxicity may result from insecticides, right? That's exactly what we're talking about. Nerve agents, medications, and mushrooms. The most common cause of cholinergic toxicity worldwide is exposure to the organophosphates and the carbamate insecticides, right? Like Aldicarb and some of the other ones I just mentioned. Exposure to these insecticides may be through inhalation of vapors, ingestion, and direct contact to the chemicals within the skin or mucous membrane, as well as the sarin gas, which is a nerve gas typically seen in chemical warfare. This is like the majority of our medications that we use to slowly kill you in the name of your health and protection have always come from chemical warfare and then repurposed as medicine. It's disgusting. You guys need to learn your history. Sarin gas was made originally in Germany in 1938 as a pesticide. It is well known for being involved in a terrorist attack in Japan in 1994 and 95. Okay, epidemiology. The organophosphates have been used worldwide for over 50 years as insecticides. Though usage has decreased in the past 10 to 20 years, there's about 3 million exposures to organophosphates or carbamates worldwide each year, with approximately 200,000 fatalities as a result of exposure. Where's the outcry, guys? 1 million of these exposures were found to be unintentional, while the other 2 million exposures were secondary to suicide attempts. The American Association of Poison Control Centers, 87,000 human exposures to pesticides in the United States in 1996 alone. Okay. Poisoning due to occupational exposure accounted for a fifth. Anyway, exposure is everywhere. And complications. Because the cholinergic toxicity involves the parasympathetic nervous system, many severe complications can occur. Due to the severe bronchospasm and bronchorrhea, the respiratory system may fail and require assisted ventilation. Respiratory failure may also occur from the profound muscle weakness that can affect the muscles of the diaphragm. The cardiovascular system may collapse due to the profound bradycardia, hypotension, and hypertension, or arrhythmias, which can accelerate in patient with known coronary artery disease, known chronic heart failure, and other cardiovascular diseases. These effects on cardiovascular and respiratory system may result on cardiopulmonary arrest and death. Electrolyte abnormalities may also result from excessive vomiting and diarrhea associated with the cholinergic toxicity, that food poisoning, putting the patient at risk of arrhythmia and death. Awesome. So, guys, I just wanted to touch on some of the, you can dive into so much more. There's tons of research on carbamates, how it affects, the melatonin receptors, carbamates, and how it's destroying our environment and many of the animals in our world, the organophosphates and carbamate poisoning within humans. Yeah, again, the acetylcholinesterase enzyme blocking mechanism of this, causing all kinds of problems, subacute and chronic effects in our bodies, seizure control, all kinds of issues. Anyway, let's go back to the article. I just wanted to really hit on how horrible this chemical is and the fact that your regulatory agencies, they don't give a crap. All right. Here we go. The EPA has not yet indicated whether it will be... Okay. So we said it's going to be on 400,000 acres of crops if they approve the request by AgLogic. The EPA's growing reputation across the globe as a pesticide pushover is highlighted by the fact that Aldicarb's makers are actually arguing that one reason it would be Safe? One reason it's safe to use this poison in the United States is because it cannot be used virtually anywhere else in the world. So at a global scale, it's not that bad, just on the Americans. The logic goes that since Aldicarb is banned in most countries, it won't be found in imported food. Therefore, people who eat or drink a mix of imported and domestic foods will have their Aldicarb exposure diluted, so to speak. Oh my gosh. I'm laughing, but this should be infuriating to all of us. It's been banned everywhere else, so there's no harm in allowing its use here approach is shocking. It's as shocking as it is absurd. But you'd be mistaken to think this type of argument will get the derision it deserves. The EPA has already indicated a willingness to revisit its cancellation of Aldicarb based on this very argument. So dumb. The EPA's troubling decision to consider broader use of Aldicarb reflects a well-documented trend in the agency. For example, get this, the EPA is in the process of approving the use of up to 650,000 pounds of the medically important antibiotic streptomycin as a pesticide on 500,000 acres of the same citrus trees that may be treated with Aldicarb and several other new and older pesticides. Okay, 650,000 pounds of the antibiotic streptomycin. By contrast, only 14,000 pounds of streptomycin's entire antibiotic class are used for human medicinal purposes each year. Hold on 1 minute. Okay. Now, the EPA's reckless decision ignores the fact that streptomycin is not only considered critically important for human medicine by the World Health Organization, but is currently used to fight another global pandemic that is killing an estimated 1 million people each year, tuberculosis. The wanton overuse of human medicines to treat bacterial disease in plants is why the U.S. Center for Disease Control and Prevention has raised concerns over this impending approval and why the European Union, Brazil, and other nations have banned its use on plants entirely, as we should too. EPA, you guys suck. The overuse of antibiotics like streptomycin, which are essential to treating human disease, can threaten public health because it facilitates the growth of bacteria that have developed resistance to these medicines. The EPA's careless approach to both Aldicarb and streptomycin are symptoms of severely broken pesticide regulation system in the U.S. Broken when it comes to protecting the environment and the people, which is supposed to be their job. Exactly how the corporations would want it because it supports their bottom line. So, man. One that instead of asking whether it should approve a dangerous pesticide usually finds a way to greenlight any product proposed by the pesticide industry, which is true. They always get it through. It is, of course, possible that a Biden administration will step in and prevent the broader approval of Aldicarb or streptomycin from ever happening. I doubt it. This has never hinged on the presidential administration. They don't give a crap either. They say, oh, well, you're the experts, EPA, you decide. And guess what? Nothing's going to change. Never has, regardless of whoever's in the... It doesn't matter. None of that crap matters. All that matters is money. Guys, follow the money. But it's also possible, I get that what they're doing here, trying to call out and say, hey, we're calling you to do this and trying to put some pressure here. I get it. It's not going to happen. It's also possible that with dozens of other important environmental issues to address, coupled with the CDC overwhelmed with the pandemic and an American public conditioned to trust the EPA's judgment, that their approvals will just slide right on through, as usual. That is the path of least resistance and business as usual in the EPA's pesticide office, unfortunately. The deeply flawed regulatory process is why the U.S. allows the use of 85 pesticides at a level of hundreds of millions of pounds each year that have been banned or are being phased out in the European Union, China, or Brazil, according to peer-reviewed studies authored last year. Yep, we are the pesticide dumping ground. which is exactly what we're going to say. It's why, just in the last few years, the EPA approved more than 100 pesticide products containing ingredients widely considered to be the most dangerous still in use, including some that were previously targeted for phase-out in the U.S. This includes 2 products containing methyl bromide, a potent ozone-depleting chemical that the U.S. committed to phasing out 15 years ago under the Montreal Protocol, yet we're approving more and more of them. It's why, just last fall, the EPA approved several new toxic pesticides and proposed the reapproval of dozens of older toxic pesticides, including, guys, atrazine, paraquat, and multiple neonicotinoids and organophosphates and carbamates that are known to cause serious harm to people, to wildlife, and the environment. The EPA is not a protection agency. It is the destruction agency of the environment and of the people and of the animals, of all of us. It's why the U.S. is widely considered by pesticide companies to be a dumping ground for the world's worst poisons. If the EPA ignores Aldicarb's well-documented harm to humans and the environment and bows to the pesticide makers' request to greatly expand its use, it will further cement our well-deserved reputation for putting pesticide company profits ahead of the health of young children and imperiled wildlife of all of us. But before this story becomes a full reality, the Biden EPA should quickly step up and demonstrate its commitment to return the agency to a critical job its title evokes: environmental protection. They don't know what that means. A decision by the agency early in the new year to reject broader uses of Aldicarb and streptomycin and revisit many of the recent deplorable decisions made by the EPA's pesticide program would send an important message signaling that science, not the heavy-handed influence of agribusiness, will now drive all pesticide decisions moving forward. Ha. Yeah, right. I wish it would. I get it, Nathan. I get what you're saying, and I hear the hope. But based on results over the past 100 years, that ain't what's going to happen. Unless we as consumers just stop buying their crap, right? That's where we have power. We have power not only to influence these behaviors, but to control your own health and your own life. And that's why I share this type of information, so that you can have knowledge, because knowledge is power, and power will give you the ability to take control of your health and take control of your life and make better decisions. And when you're making better decisions, if we all stop buying this, they're going to stop producing it, because they will lose all the money. All that revenue will just stop coming in, and it will be directed toward the organic farms, and they'll have more money to try to expand. Unfortunately, the landscape in the United States is completely toxic, and it's going to take years to turn this around. If you guys haven't seen Kiss the Ground documentary, that's a great one. Regenerative farming is seriously the only real answer. My father-in-law sent me an article about these stupid vertical farms that are controlled by robots and artificial intelligence, and that they can create all this produce in 2 acres, you know, more than you could with all these other, but there's no soil. It's just water and seeds and growing up the wall robotically. It's not natural. It's not organic. We need the microbes in the earth. We need the carbon being pulled into the soils. We need the biodiversity in our food, not the poison that's destroying it all. And as it destroys our food quality, our health goes with it. And we're being acutely poisoned. I have felt that in the past. It's horrible. As I read this, I was like, oh my gosh, food poisoning is not about the food or a bacteria or something. It's these toxins. That is food poisoning. It is poisoning by these chemical companies directly at you and your kids and me. Man. So anyway, you have the power to do better, to choose better, eat organic. We should all be learning how to have our own gardens. That's a goal of mine. I want to be able to garden and produce my own foods that we eat a lot. You know, carrots, celery, potatoes, herbs like cilantro and parsley and things like that. We need to be able to grow our own. We need to repurpose our backyards into mini farms and do better. We all need to do better. We need to be more self-sufficient. We need to honor our bodies, and we will stop being sick. That includes mental health. That includes neurological health, all of our systems, cardiology, our cardiovascular system, everything. You stop poisoning yourself, you will begin to feel better, and you will start to thrive, and eventually you will be whole again. I'm years into that process, and I get better and better and better, but it took me years of destruction, and it's going to take years to reverse it. And start now for your little ones, right? Insist on the best for them, which is organic, without the 10,000 chemicals that are added to the food in the manufacturing process, without the 85,000 chemicals in the pesticide process. Give them food the way God created it, the way God intended it to be grown and consumed, as well as the animals of the earth, so that when we are either consuming or participating in the environment with them, we're not getting the poisons that were fed to them. So it really just comes down to honoring the earth. And I put it all the time in the hashtags when I post stuff. Trust God, trust yourself, honor nature, trust nature, naturally thrive, nourishing traditions. These are all choices. We are in power. Stop outsourcing your health to medical professionals that just want to drug and suppress your symptoms of your body, sending out an alarm saying, something's wrong, you're poisoning me, please stop. You say, oh, shut up. I just want to keep consuming this crap. That's the wrong way to do it. We need to do better. Okay, all of us, including me. All right. Love you guys. Bye.